We've had a request to show loose grit grinding from our rough grit 60, or this thing is an 80 grit actually, all the way through to seeing if we can polish all by hand without machinery. Yes, we can. So let me show you all the way through by hand how to take a piece that just has some texture on it, and I believe this one's a saw cut, and we're going to run from our rough grit all the way to a polish all by hand without machinery through this. So we're starting off with our 60 grit. We're going to add some water to it. Mix our grit in. We've got a fair amount of grit on there. Drop or two of dishwashing liquid just to cut the surface tension on it. Let's see how we're doing on this side. Okay, you may not, yeah, you can see, I've still got texture going on there, so I'm not quite through that, so I got to go a little bit further. All right, let's check it again. Much better. Now we've got our saw cut side that I need to take down as well, so let's do this side. We still got a ways to go. The saw cut's still on there, so let's keep going with our 80 grit. Let's check it again. Much better. And now we're ready to move on to our 220 grit. So our 220 grit silicon carbide. Just a few drops in there. And let's start on from our 80 grit to our 220 grit. Well, let's take a quick look. This is our 80 grit side that we just finished, and that's our 220 grit side. Now it really should go a little bit further on this, but I'm going to go ahead and switch to this other side real quick. I think it could probably stand a few more minutes on that 220, but let's go ahead and do this other side of the 80. Let's take a look at this side now. It's not too bad. Getting a little luminous. So let's go ahead and switch over to our 400 grit. I have my cardboard on here, so I just flipped my plate glass over. So I've got grit on the bottom side and it's on the cardboard, so it's going to be easy for me to clean up later. Just trying to get through this as quickly as I can to show you how it's done. And this is our 400 grit. You can see super fine, very powdery. Just going to go ahead and plop a little bit of dishwashing liquid in there. Add a little bit of water. But too much water, so add a little bit more grit to it. And we're back to our piece here. Let's check this side real quick. So have a quick look. That's our 220 grit side, and that's our 400 grit side. Maybe a little bit hard to tell, but that's definitely more translucent on the 400 grit side. Let's do this side on the 400 and then you'll see the difference. Let's check it out. You can see we're looking a lot more semi-translucent. You can see what a polished edge looks like there versus this at a 400. Let's move on to a pumice and see if we can hit a rougher pumice on this from the 400, or we may have to step to a 600 or an 800 in our loose grit. So our next step would be going to pumice. Now pumice is a little bit different than silicon carbide. It's not nearly as sharp and abrasive, and you need something that's going to help it abrade the glass. So we're going to use it with a Scotch-Brite pad here. We're going to mix this with some water, make a little bit of a mud consistency out of it, and then apply it to our glass. And then use our Scotch-Brite pad to kind of grind this by hand. Again, a lot easier to do mechanically, but you can do it by hand and it works pretty well. Add some more, and this is an 0.5 pumice, so it's a fairly aggressive pumice. And we actually go all the way to a #1 pumice that we sell, which is really abrasive, which, you know, may be a better idea than going with this 0.5. I don't do this by hand very often, but I think the 0.5 should work pretty well for us. Let's see if we made any difference in that short amount of time here. Yeah, so a few minutes and very little effect on it. The pumice is going to take quite a while, unfortunately. So again, while this is doable to do everything by hand, probably not the direction I would go if I had a choice. If I have no choice, yeah, it's gonna work, but it's gonna take some time. We may be better stepping back to a #1 pumice on this. And even then, we're gonna have to move through probably a 2F and a 4F pumice to get to a finished stage on this. Let's see if that's done anything more. It is slowly working. This is our 400 grit silicon carbide surface. This is our pumice surface. You can see we've got a little bit more reflectivity in that surface for the pumice than we do in our silicon carbide surface. So it's doing it, it's getting there, but I can still see a lot of the silicon carbide surface in there. I would say if you wanted to move all the way through, I would almost suggest running, you know, from a 400 to either a 600 or an 800 grit, and then maybe going through a #1 pumice and an 0.5 and a 2F. So it's a lot of steps, and it's definitely something you can do, and you can do on a budget, and especially if you've only got a piece or two to deal with, and you can get it through. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to hand grind glass all the way through all the steps. I think I would definitely add more steps in just to make each step take a little less time. And especially the pumice stage. The pumice stage is really not quick at all. Pumice is a very fine abrasive, and it's not much harder than the glass itself. So it's going to take a lot of elbow grease to abrade the glass enough with the pumice to achieve the surfaces you want. Let's check that again. So again, it's getting a little further. I can see a little more reflectivity, but you can also see in the video lots of little pitting in that glass surface, still from the silicon carbide. There's our 400 grit, not really reflecting a lot. This side, you know, doing much better, but it's a lot. It's a lot of work. So I'm going to knock this out a little further and come back. To give you a quick idea of the difference between hand and doing it mechanically, so there's my 0.5 pumice working by hand with the Scotch-Brite pad, and while it's reflective and nice, you know, it's taken a while. That's probably 6-7 minutes of that Scotch-Brite pad with an 0.5. This is less than a minute with a 2F pumice on the flat lap on a piece of felt. And you can see it's significantly better after less than a minute. If I spent probably 2-3 minutes on the flat lap on a 2F, this would be done. Doable, yes. Work yourself really hard, also yes. I'll finish this stuff up on the pumice, and we'll come back and look at hand polishing with some cerium impregnated material. Okay, so we're back after pumice, and I'm gonna confess to you, I did not hand lap this with the pumice. I broke down and went to my flat lap grinder with my 2F pumice to clean this up. While it would work going with my Scotch-Brite pad and my 0.5 pumice and my 2F pumice, I'm just too old and too tired to take the time to do that. So I cheated to get us to this pumice step, which is really quite nice. We always tend to call pumice a dirty polish here in the shop because it really turns out really quite nice. It's not fully polished, so if you wanted to hand polish, we have cerium impregnated material from 3M, and this is a scrap piece that I have here, but we also make this in a little 2.5 by 2.5 inch handy pad material that's on a thin foam backing, so it's easy to move around your finger like I'm going to do today. Or we have it in a larger hand pad if you're doing a larger surface, but it does need water. Like any other cerium, you need to have water to get it activated. 3M makes this material that has these little microscopic pyramids on the surface. It's their Trizac material, and instead of aluminum oxide, they have cerium oxide in here for polishing. So the little pyramids, when I use this on the surface of the glass, will give me my friction that I need, and then we'll just have some water on here that activates the cerium. And you know, if I thought pumice was bad, doing this is even worse. It will work, but you know, if you've got the way to do your pre-polish and polish mechanically instead of doing it by hand, I really, really highly recommend doing it mechanically. While you can do it by hand like this, I would rather rob a bank and buy a grinder than have to do this on a regular basis. It's just a lot of ridiculous manual labor and a lot of elbow grease. It takes a really long time, and you can see, you know, it's got a little bit of white showing up here, so the cerium is activating from this pad. It's just going to take me forever to accomplish a polish with this, even from a really nice 2F pumice surface. If this were mechanical, this would go super, super fast, either with cerium impregnated material like this, or on felt with cerium oxide slurry. And you can see a little bit more of the cerium building up there. So you can see it is activating the water. I am getting some friction there. But you know, this is going to be a couple of hours of me doing this to try and get this polished. Just a few minutes. Let's go see if it made any difference at all real quick. And it's really going to be hard to tell in the video because it's hard to see the surface difference between the 2F and the polish in video. And it did work. It's a little shinier right in this area. Like I said, it might be really hard to see in the video, but it does work. It's just you got to do small areas at a time and a lot of elbow grease to get through it. So, you know, if you really had to, yes, you could move from rough grind to a polish all by hand on a piece of glass. It just takes time and a lot of effort and a lot of elbow grease to get there. So yeah, totally doable if you really wanted to put the time and effort in and a very low budget. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. So there you go. That was that request to see the full process from rough grind to polish all by hand without machinery, even though I cheated a little bit on the end there. It's all right. Thanks very much.